great action requires great speaking. Think of Churchill inspiring Britain to keep on fighting against overwhelming odds. Or JFK inspiring the USA to shoot for the moon. Or Mandela inspiring South Africa to overthrow apartheid. The question is, who will the next set of heroes be who inspire us to overcome our next great challenge? Climate change. Over the next 2 weeks, here in Scotland, COP26 will be taking place, the UN Climate Change Conference. And there's going to be a lot of talking at this conference, but will there be a lot of speaking? As Greta Thunberg so often tells us, the talking isn't enough. Yes, we need the words. Yes, we need the dialogue. But ultimately, the difference between talking and speaking is the action. Talking just creates more words, but speaking is what inspires the action. And if we're going to change this conference from talking into speaking, from inertia into action, there are 3 key messages that I think need to be portrayed and communicated at this conference. So, world leaders, if you're listening to little old me, here are my suggestions on how you can turn the talking into speaking and how to turn the inaction into action. The first key message that's got to be conveyed at COP26 is ease. There's got to be a sense of ease in the actions and steps that are taken after this conference. Let me elaborate in a little bit more detail. Big cars run on small parts. Yes, climate change is a grand problem, but looking at the grand problem in its entirety creates this sense of helplessness, of how can we possibly deal with that? There is no one solution to climate change. If there was, we would have done it already, wouldn't we? Solving climate change is the accumulation of lots of smaller steps. It's looking at the waste we produce. It's looking at how we use energy. It's looking at how we treat our oceans. It's looking at forestation and, more importantly, deforestation. All of these factors play into the grand equation. You've got to break it down into the smaller component parts. And you've got to break it down to the level where there's a sense of, oh, actually, yeah, we can do that. Plant a couple trees? Yeah, sure. Use a couple more electric cars? Yeah, sure. And I know that sounds a little bit facetious and like I'm making fun of the problem, but that's almost what you've got to boil it down to. When everyone involved feels that there's a sense of ease in what they can do, and most importantly, a sense of autonomy and control over what they can do, of yes, if we do these small steps, then we can make a difference. And our difference contributes to the larger difference. If you don't get that sense of ease across to people, if people go, man, it's too hard, it's too complicated, who am I to do this? How is our little country going to make a difference to this? If that's the feeling that people are left with after the conference, then you have done a whole lot of talking and there won't be any action. The second key message that COP26 needs to get right, it's the economy, stupid. I believe that climate change and the argument for green energy and saving the planet has been far too long based on morality. The idea that saving the planet is the right thing. And by the way, it is, but after 30 years of campaigning, you've already won over those who are on the morality argument. There are some people who, even when they know it's the right thing, or when they're told it's the right thing, they're still not going to do anything. They're going to say it's someone else's problem. I won't be affected by it, or I don't even believe in it. To continue to pin your campaign on the morality argument is not going to keep working in the future. Climate change and the arguments and campaigns against stopping climate change need to be pinned on economics. When green energy makes more economic sense than fossil fuel energy, you'll see a very rapid transition and a lot of the problems will go away. I'll give you an example. A couple years ago, the Chinese Communist Party received 2 tenders for a massive development of land. One tender was from an oil and gas company for a refinery. The other tender was from a solar energy company. The Chinese Communist Party, not renowned for their green agenda, chose the solar energy. Why? They looked at the financial forecasts and they said, looking into the future, it makes more financial sense to invest in the solar energy rather than the oil and gas. We can appeal to China, one of the biggest industries in the world, to please stop using fossil fuels, please stop polluting the land. But they're not going to listen to the morality arguments, but they will listen to the economic arguments. And this goes across a lot of countries, that when people find it cheaper to run an electric car than a petrol car, they're going to use electric. When people's energy bills go lower when they're run on wind and solar and water, as opposed to oil and gas, they're going to switch over. It's one of the most predictable outcomes that we can have. If we make green energy financially viable, if it makes economic sense, you're going to see the action come into play. The final message that COP26 has got to get right is equality. There's an expression, a rising tide lifts all boats. In this case, the rising tides do not lift all boats. The Maldives is going to be much more affected than Switzerland. Between countries, there is a big inequality in how climate change is going to affect people around the world. But it's not just between countries, it's also within those countries. Take the USA. New York, Los Angeles, they're probably going to be fine in climate change and with the rising tides. But the poorest people in Florida, Louisiana, Mississippi, they're going to be devastated by climate change. If COP26 is going to get this collective action, bringing together a couple hundred countries who don't often get on very well, there's got to be this sense of equality. There's got to be this sense of we're all doing our fair share. The big countries are doing more, the little countries are doing what they can. Because if the Netherlands is going, hey look, we're quite below sea level and we're doing our best to stop the rising tides, but the USA and China aren't bothering to do anything, what's the point of us doing anything? You don't want this sense of unfairness coming through the cooperation of all the different country states, because then nothing's going to happen. If you don't get this message of equality across, you won't get this collective buy-in. And without the collective buy-in, this challenge does not get solved. 3 messages will get that collective buy-in. A sense of ease, that the steps make economic sense, and that we're all in this together. World leaders, if you get that right at COP26, then we can inspire those people who are going to help us to overcome climate change. We're going to inspire the everyday people and the extraordinary people. So Macron, Biden, Johnson, if you're listening to this and you need some help with your messaging, well, you know where to find me.